Have you had a recent international order canceled or stuck in limbo? You're not alone. A major change in U.S. trade rules has upended the flow of small packages into the country, and the fallout is landing on shoppers' doorsteps. For decades, the de minimis exemption let goods valued under a set threshold enter the United States duty-free. Since 2016, that threshold was $800, essentially a tax-free allowance for your online cart. Billions of parcels, from T-shirts to earbuds, slipped through under the rule. But as of Friday, August 29, 2025, that exemption is gone. The change stems from an executive order signed by President Donald Trump on July 30th. Now, every imported item, no matter how cheap, can be taxed. Postal services and couriers in more than 24 countries, including Japan, Australia, Mexico, and much of Europe, have paused some U.S. shipments while they figure out how to collect those fees. According to Reuters, many are still searching for a workable system. The biggest hurdle is timing. Carriers must now collect the duty from the seller before the package even takes off, using a payment service pre-approved by U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Only a handful of providers were certified by the deadline, so the pipeline clogged almost overnight. Even when packages move, delays loom. Customs is bracing for roughly 4 million extra parcels to inspect each day. Major carriers like DHL warn of slowdowns, and UPS has announced a $2.50 processing surcharge on all international imports beginning in early September. Why scrap a nearly century-old rule? The White House calls the exemption a loophole. In fiscal year 2024 alone, 1.3 billion shipments worth more than $64 billion entered duty-free. Officials say big e-commerce players, such as Shein and Temu, exploited the system, undercutting U.S. retailers that must pay tariffs on similar goods. Security is another motive. The flood of lightly inspected packages, the administration argues, made it easier to slip in fentanyl, counterfeit products, and other contraband. By tagging every parcel for potential duties and thus inspection, they hope to tighten control of what crosses the border. The White House estimates the new policy could raise up to $10 billion in tariff revenue each year. Some small U.S. businesses applaud the move.
An Indianapolis seller of medical scrubs says the change levels the field. Domestic shops paying tariffs on raw materials no longer compete against overseas retailers shipping tax-free to American customers. For consumers, however, the most direct impact is higher prices. Businesses facing new tariffs are expected to pass the cost along. One analysis shows a $30 pair of slippers from China could climb past $44 once duties, surcharges, and handling fees are layered on. Outside the United States, smaller merchants are struggling. A Canadian yarn dyer who counted on American buyers has halted U.S. sales altogether, citing the added costs and paperwork. Similar stories echo from boutique makers around the world who relied on quick, cheap access to the huge U.S. market. Even American firms aren't immune. Companies that import small batches of parts or materials now face steeper expenses and more red tape, costs that may ripple through domestic supply chains. For the moment, confusion reigns. Postal operators are rewriting software, couriers are renegotiating contracts, and shoppers are refreshing tracking pages that refuse to budge. The age of ultra-cheap, duty-free goods landing at your door in days has ended abruptly. What replaces it may offer tighter security and a fairer shot for local businesses, but it will likely come with higher prices and longer waits for consumers. So if your next international order takes weeks or never arrives at all, you'll know why. The de minimis exemption is history, and global e-commerce is feeling the shockwaves.
In the world of high-stakes espionage, the most elaborate defenses can be undone by a single oversight. For Iran's leadership, that misstep belonged not to the officials themselves, but to the people assigned to shield them, bodyguards with smartphones. In a 12-day war between Israel and Iran erupted on June 13, 2025. Within hours, precision strikes killed several of Iran's most powerful military figures. Major General Gholam Ali Rashid, commander of the Khatam al-Anbiya Central Headquarters, Brigadier General Daoud Shekian, head of the IRGC Aerospace Forces Air Defense Command, and Major General Ali Shadmani, who had just been tapped to replace Rashid. The same attacks claimed prominent nuclear scientists, among them Dr. Ahmadra Zulfagari Daryani of Shahid Beheshti University, and Dr. Abdul Hamid Minushir, a specialist in reactor fuel design. How did Israeli planners know exactly where these men would be? According to intelligence reports, the answer wasn't spy satellites or undercover agents, but the digital breadcrumbs left by their protectors. Iran's senior officials routinely leave their own phones behind, yet many bodyguards and drivers ignored the rule. Israeli cyber teams allegedly exploited that gap, hacking the guards' devices to map the real-time movements of Iran's elite. In some cases, guards even posted on social media, turning covert travel into public information. One Israeli defense official later remarked, "Using so many bodyguards is a weakness we imposed on them, and we took advantage of it." The method was demonstrated again on June 16th, when Israeli jets struck a bunker in western Tehran during a closed session of Iran's Supreme National Security Council. Top leaders, including President Masoud Pezeshkian, survived underground, but several guards stationed outside died. Investigators believe at least one of those guards had defied orders and carried a phone onto the site, broadcasting the bunker's coordinates in the process. For Tehran, the episode was the gravest intelligence failure since the Iran-Iraq War. The leadership had tried to protect itself by expanding security details, yet every additional guard meant another potential leak. Former Deputy Vice President Sassan Karimi later conceded the point. Senior commanders avoided phones, he said, but their interlocutors, security guards, and drivers had phones. They did not take precautions seriously, and this is how most of them were traced. The regime moved quickly to seal the breach. New directives now ban smartphones for anyone assigned to high-ranking officials, military commanders, or nuclear scientists. Guards are limited to walkie-talkies, and Iran's Cybersecurity Command has ordered all senior personnel to abandon devices that connect to public networks. State media warn daily that Israel uses mobile tracking for assassinations, while the IRGC conducts a counter-espionage sweep, announcing arrests of people it claims are linked to Mossad. This episode underscores a central truth of modern conflict. Wars are fought not only with missiles and drones, but with data. A pocket-sized computer left on and unsecured can pinpoint a bunker, rewrite a battle plan, even decapitate a chain of command. In the 21st century, the most dangerous weapon may be the one that fits in a bodyguard's hand. A top data security official at the Social Security Administration has resigned, warning that the personal information of nearly every American may be at risk. This isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about names, Social Security numbers, and financial futures. Here's what happened, who's involved, and why it matters. The whistleblower is Charles Borges. Until recently, he was the SSA's Chief Data Officer, hired in January 2025 after years in federal cybersecurity and decorated service in the United States Navy. A few months into the job, Borges says he uncovered what he calls a massive potential data breach. When he pushed for answers, he claims he was forced out, what lawyers call a constructive discharge. He has now filed a formal whistleblower complaint. At the center of his allegation is the Numident database, every Social Security application ever filed. It holds full names, Social Security numbers, dates and places of birth, and parents' names. Borges says employees from another government group, the Department of Government Efficiency, known by its acronym DOGE, made a complete copy of Numident and moved it to a vulnerable cloud computing environment outside the SSA's direct control. So, who is DOGE? Created during the Trump administration with input from Elon Musk, the department's mission is to cut waste and eliminate fraud across federal programs. To do that, DOGE embeds its analysts inside agencies, including the SSA. Their task at Social Security: sift through massive data sets to hunt for fraudulent benefit payments. That mission has been controversial from day one. Giving an outside group unfettered access to such sensitive data alarmed privacy advocates, unions, and even SSA leaders. In February, the acting head of Social Security resigned after refusing DOGE's request for the database. Advocacy groups sued to block the transfer, and a federal judge sided with them in March. The case quickly reached the Supreme Court, which reversed the lower court in June and cleared the way for DOGE to review the data. Soon after, the full Numident copy was created, the very act Borges says turned a secure trove into a potential gold mine for hackers. According to Borges, the copy was made without the usual oversight from SSA security teams. There was no independent system to track who accessed the data, and an SSA IT official had already labeled the proposed cloud environment high risk.
Borges says that whenever he asked for details or attempted to oversee DOGE's work, agency leadership rebuffed or ignored him. The Social Security Administration disputes all of this. A spokesperson says the data is stored in a long-standing environment walled off from the Internet, and that the agency is not aware of any compromise. They declined to discuss Borges's departure, calling it a personnel matter. In his resignation letter, Borges describes a workplace clouded by panic and dread. He claims that after raising security concerns, he was met with exclusion, isolation, and a culture of fear, leaving him unable to do his job legally or ethically. Remaining in the post, he says, would have made him responsible for a breach he had no power to prevent. So where does that leave the rest of us? On one side, a decorated cybersecurity expert insists that the personal data of 300 million Americans is sitting in a poorly secured cloud bucket. On the other, the Social Security Administration insists everything is locked down and there's no cause for alarm. The clash highlights a broader tension inside government.
the drive to modernize and curb fraud versus the equally vital duty to safeguard personal information. For now, the dispute is playing out through whistleblower channels and, potentially, future court battles. What's at stake is nothing less than the integrity of the nation's most comprehensive civilian database and the trust Americans place in the agency that safeguards it.